Books with Corey. We're going to continue reading Echoes from Eden, Book 1. What I'm going to probably be doing is I'm going to be reading 2 times in a row this book, and then I'll go back to the book by Gary Sigler, which is Trusting the Witness Within, is what we're looking at. And so right now I'm going to continue in Echoes from Eden, Book 1, because it's a rather large book, so I'm going to do 2 readings of this per every 1 reading of the other book, okay? All right, but in the meantime, let's get started. Just a couple of recommendations I make at the beginning is, now of course, let me just say this too. Like, subscribe, and share. Share this with your friends. This is some of the hottest, this is, as I say in the description, this is the greatest book ever written about the Garden of Eden and those realities. So, like, subscribe, and share, and comment also below as well if you're inspired in some way. Now, the other thing is there's 2 directions that I want to address. One is the religious direction, to where people feel that they have a, they know doctrine, they know truth. They were born on Thursday, in church on Sunday. They know what they believe. Even other religions, maybe even besides Christianity, we have certain belief systems that are, give us some security about, knowing something, But here's the thing. The vastness of the truth of this is so vast, there's really no end in discovery. This is a paradise that has no end of discovery to it. And so just a recommending there that we be open to expansion in our understanding of truth. On the other side of the coin, if we don't, if religious terminology is triggering, or we've left the Bible behind, or we just have no openness to anything that has anything to do with any kind of religious triggers or Bible references. These realities are universal. They do actually have relevance to all of mankind. And these are not traditional, I just ate here. These are not traditional writings that you'd normally see in a religious setting. So try to have your heart opened. Don't get distracted by semantics and words, but more see it as a more universal picture that applies to all of us, regardless of we're an atheist or whatever we are here. I wanted to continue to read because out of the length of the book, but also the profundity of some of the things being discussed. Now, the last time I read a quote from the 1800s, which actually did end. I didn't give a reference on the end quote. It was talking about, the Amplified Bible says, and when those who belonged to him, his kinsmen, heard it, they went out to take him by force, for they kept saying, he is out of his mind, beside himself, deranged. End quote. So that was the quote from pages 43 to 44 of a writing that we don't know who the author was, but a very fascinating point of how his own family, his very closest kinsmen, thought he was beside himself, deranged. So no one understood him. I know that there is a reference where it says Jesus wept. They say it's the shortest chapter, or shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. But the implication there, or the understanding there, is this. He wept because nobody understood him. And there was that loneliness, and one of the greatest hurts in the human condition is to be misunderstood. So I'll continue reading here, page 45. Echoes from Eden, Book 1 by J Preston Eby. In this marvelous parable of parables, the life of the Son of God is found this remarkable story of how his own family seized upon him to take him away by force because, said they, he is mad. And I declare to you that from the world's standpoint, the charge is true. It is useless to denounce this as a libel, a bitter, blasphemous slander. It is not so. It is not so. It is true. There was no alternative. Either he was the Christ, the Son, the living God, or he was beside himself. A holy life is always a phenomenon. A life which lives and moves after the principles of the kingdom of heaven is always a wonder. The world knoweth it not. It is either supernatural or morbid. Now, by the way, J Preston Eby had quite a religious background, and so he kind of hung on to some of the King James Old English. So that's what I mean. I mean, let's not get distracted by some of those things, having that religious feel, because these are very enlightened, very expansive, very breaking the boxes of tradition and religious ideologies. This goes beyond that into deeper realms of truth that, excuse me, like I said, is part and parcel of how beautiful this book is. And again, we're talking about what we're reading about was titled here as The Eccentricities of Sonship. And it is either supernatural or morbid. For what is being beside oneself? What is madness? It is eccentricity. Eccentricity, having a different center from other people. Webster defines eccentricity as not having the same center as two circles, not having the axis exactly in the center, out of the ordinary, deviating from the norm, as in conduct, unconventional. Here is a man, for instance, who devotes his life to collecting objects of antiquarian interest, old coins perhaps, or old editions of books, or perhaps nothing more sensational than stray dogs or cats. His center is odd. His life revolves in an orbit of his own. Of course, you're not talking about Jesus there. It's just in general. His center is different from those around him. Therefore, his friends say he is, excuse me, eccentric. Ray Prinzing once commented on this word. Some folk differ from the norm of society, filling their life with numbers of cats or dogs. Their house is full in every room. Their yards are full of them. For they are centering their lives in animals. Some thus view them as being eccentric, for their center is odd, different than those about them. Their life even revolves in an orbit of its own. By the way, we have here, me and my wife, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 dogs. We have 4 cats. We have 2 ferrets. And I think that's the extent of it at this point. We've had other animals as well, other pets, birds, and bearded dragons, and so anyway, are we eccentric? All right. Or here is an engine with many moving wheels, large and small, cogged and plain, but each revolving upon a central axis, each turning in a perfect circle. But at one side there is one small wheel which does not turn in a circle. Its motion is different from all the rest, and the changing curve of its motion is unlike any ordinary line of the mathematician. The engineer will tell you that it is called the eccentric because it has a peculiar center. Now, when Jesus Christ came among men, he found them nearly all revolving in one circle. There was but one center to human life, self. Excuse me. It mattered not whether it was the merchant peddling his wares, the king in the palace, the thief by the road, or the priest in the temple. Man's chief end was to glorify himself and enjoy himself forever. Then, as now, by the all but unanimous consensus of the people, this present life and this present world were sanctioned as the legitimate object of all man's effort and energy by the whole gravitation of society. Jesus, as a man, must have been drawn to the very verge of this vast vortex of self-indulgence, personal ease and pleasure, which had sucked in the populations of the world since that fateful day in Eden. But he stepped back. He refused absolutely to be attracted. He put everything out of his life that had even a temptation in it to the world's center. He humbled himself. There is no place in the world's vortex for humbleness. He emptied himself. Gravitation cannot act on emptiness. He became of no reputation. There's no place in the world for namelessness. So the prince of this world came, but found nothing in him. He found nothing because the true center of Christ's life was not to be seen. It was with God. The unseen and the eternal moved him. He did not seek his own happiness or gain, but only the will of the Father. He went about doing good. His object in going about was not gain, but to do good. Now, all of this was very eccentric to the world system. It was living on new lines altogether. He did God's will. He pleased not himself. His center was to one side of self. He was beside himself. From the standpoint of the world and the flesh, it was simply madness. Think of this idea of his, for instance, of starting out into a life with so visionary an idea as that of doing good and with no price attached. No offering plate, no books for sale, no monthly newsletter telling about all the needs of the work, no gadgets offered to those sending in an offering of $5 or more, no special blessings or prophecies pronounced on those who obey God in contributing $20. 0 to the kingdom, no brochure on how to make out your will and leave your estate to the Lord's work. Jesus did not operate in worldly methods and techniques. Man was not his center. Money was not his center. Means and methods and programs were not his center. God was his center. His trust was not in God's people. His trust was in God. God was his source of life and supply. To be continued.